Welcome to Wednesday on Golic Golic. Ducks fly together. Big news for Oregon as Dante Moore announces he's coming back for 2026, while Alabama's Ty Simpson went on the record to explain why he's not budging on his NFL dreams as the draft just got a shakeup. And as the portal season rages in college football, the NFL coaching carousel surges on. Is John Harbaugh getting out of the building as he meets with the New York Giants today, talking about their opening in the future for Jackson Dart and Company? And Seahawks cornerback Tariq Woolen joins us to talk about the one-seed Seahawks preparation for another NFC West tilt this weekend as the divisional round gets set to go. Plenty of news and notes from that end as we welcome you in. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. here today, but as we mentioned off the top, just a few half hour before we're set to come on air, Oregon quarterback Dante Moore, a guy projected in most people's minds and mock drafts to be the number 2 overall pick behind Fernando Mendoza this spring, goes on SportsCenter and announces that he's coming back for another season with the Ducks. The last time that we had seen him, he was facing off in the college football playoff semifinal against one of the other prospective top draft picks, the presumed number 1 overall pick in Fernando Mendoza, and gave a lot of people pause about what his NFL future might look like despite that lofty draft grade. So is this the right decision for him at this point, Dad?
Oh, I think it is a smart decision to make. And remember, he was projected as a number 2 pick in the draft. You go back to when Peyton Manning was considered the number 1 pick of the draft, and he went back. Now, there's money involved for these players as well. Obviously, he's going to get paid at Oregon. But he's a guy who in 23 had 5 starts at UCLA, 24 had no starts, and then this year had 15 starts. So a total of 20 starts only. And the league is littered with quarterbacks who have come out with 20 or less starts in the teen starts and have struggled to make it. I think this is a smart, long-range look. And I get starting your NFL clock, starting your first contract to get to the second contract. But I think for stability, the longer you can stay in college and read defenses and get to reading defenses, get to making checks at the line, the more reps you get at that, the better off you're going to be in the long run. This 2 years ago, the 6 quarterback first round group really kind of showed that with how many starts that a lot of them had in college, and 3 of them are now in the divisional round of the playoffs in just their second year. So I think this is looking at the long range plan and not the short range plan, and I think it's extremely smart.
Yeah, it's a sign of the times, right? We saw a number of quarterbacks stave off the draft last year who had potential first-round grades, and it didn't necessarily go their way. So there is still risk involved in this, even if now it's mitigated by the fact that these guys are making almost NFL caliber dollars as college players. The fact that we're hearing numbers thrown out for quarterbacks between $4 and $6 million leads you to believe that, hey, yes, the prospect of coming back, developing more, which you're right, the parts of his game that did need development almost all seemed reps and timed based, right? It was responding to the things that he saw from more complex defenses like the Indiana Hoosiers that beat them not once but twice this year. So all that's well and good, but instead of back when I was playing just over a decade ago, where you'd talk about insurance policies for these guys that were notoriously hard to collect on,
right?
There ain't no insurance now. This is real money that these guys are able to earn at this level while they go and continue to get that development. And the interesting part for Oregon, I think, is twofold. One, do other players, we mentioned Penn State as that most recent model, do other draft eligible players follow this same lead, seeing the opportunity they have going into next year? You know, Amari Washington and Mateo Uiagalelei, 2 great guys on that D-line that could be high NFL picks this year if they were to go. Do they come back and form a juggernaut, a team that on paper could be vying for the number 1 ranking going into next year? And then I think one of the bigger ones in the ripple effect in this, what does this mean for Dylan Raiola? Now, the former Nebraska quarterback who just transferred and signed with the Oregon Ducks inside of the last week, it now positioned as number 2 in the depth chart. And we know he ended last season with an injury, right? Had a broken fibula that ended his season in November. Now, that's not an ACL. The recovery time for a break is much different, anywhere between 8 to 12 weeks. And so the notion of him being ready for this upcoming season, not altogether discounted, but Dad, do you see him sticking around on this Oregon roster through a season where he'd be riding the bench?
No, I do not. I absolutely do not. I mean, listen, is it smart coming off an injury to maybe sit and collect yourself for a year and still have eligibility left? There is something to that. But a 19, 20, 21-year-old quarterback who's been a starter for a couple of years is going to want to be a starter somewhere else, is going to think that they can walk in, and in this day and age, they can, of where the musical chairs are left to take a quarterback. He is going to want to play. And this is not going to be like the Damon Williams situation where he signed at Washington, then tried to leave, and they were going to fight that legally. I have no doubt Oregon would and I'm not sure if Raiola signed anything yet, but I have no doubt that Oregon would let him out and not have to pay two quarterbacks, even though you'd have security and a backup. But I don't know if we're there yet. We haven't seen this yet in college where you have two basically starting quarterbacks both getting paid hefty amounts of money on the same roster. I absolutely do not see him staying at Oregon.
And that'll be interesting because I don't know what the mechanics of that are. This is newfound territory for a lot of us. And you're right. Would there be some mutual understanding, or is Oregon and is Dylan Raiola content to ride out this year, get healthy and develop behind the scenes, and then go into next year without having to worry about who your starting quarterback's necessarily going to be in the portal versus the pull that you're going to get? Because this is kind of a two ships in the night situation as we have this conversation. Ty Simpson, the quarterback at Alabama, that was one of the other quarterbacks talked about in this class, did declare for the NFL and then talked to On3 recently and talked about the process of teams trying to lure him back, specifically teams like Tennessee, teams like Ole Miss, teams like Miami, who reportedly offered him up to $6.5 million to come back and return to school. And he talked about wanting to chase the NFL dream, but also the advice that he got from Nick Saban saying, if money wasn't a part of this problem, who would you pick and why? And for Ty Simpson, he also referenced not wanting to tarnish what he believes that he had built in terms of a reputation at Alabama. And so all that is to say, in a quarterback class where the game of musical chairs had kind of stopped, we do still have teams that we're talking about having enough need to throw potentially $6 million at a quarterback in Ty Simpson that we knew was imperfect.
Listen, I think this is a mistake by Ty Simpson. He was a one-year starter, 15 starts. He hasn't begun to even scratch the surface of reading defenses and making quick decisions. Yes, I get it. He's had 15 starts, but I don't. And now you add in, he can make $6.5 million. Again, that's way more money than before they were paying people. And I know as a rookie quarterback in the first round, you'd get 20-some million as a signing bonus. But to play another year for $6.5 million and get more starts underneath your belt, the deck is stacked against him, Mike. It just is. For him to go to the NFL and learn the complexities of an NFL offense, have to read the complexities of an NFL defense. Now, a lot of it will depend on where he goes in the draft. He was projected as a first rounder. Yeah, but a late first rounder. So a late first rounder, you could be going to a better team that maybe has a starting quarterback, so maybe you still can sit. Because I don't think with Dante Moore going back, all of a sudden Ty Simpson jumps up to the possibility of the number 2 pick in the draft. We know quarterbacks are overvalued. We know some quarterbacks are taken higher than they should be. But personally, I think this is a mistake. If I were advising, and I'm not, and he's not going to listen to me, I would say go get more reps in college. I get it that you're trying to be careful of injury as well. That's always kind of hanging there in your head. But 15 starts, I just don't think you've begun to really start to scratch the surface of reading defenses, especially complex defenses of the NFL.
If I can push back a little bit for him, because, development's always good, but you're looking at next year where, once again, we're talking about that quarterback class as the loaded one now, where guys have positioned themselves for that. And so if you are a guy in Ty Simpson who wants to be an NFL quarterback and is being told you're a first rounder in a class that now feels historically thin past Fernando Mendoza, man, what a great opportunity to go out there and get those reps at the level that you're going to need to play that at. I get the NFL is not a developmental league, but this to me, outside of Ty Simpson's decision, is going to be far more about what level of restraint do NFL teams have Because you're right, he's not the number 2 pick in the draft, not by any stretch. But who's going to get desperate closer to midway through the first round than late in the first round, where Ty Simpson probably belongs at this point based on the evaluation, and maybe reaches for that right now? I saw Dane Brugler over at The Athletic say that a lot of NFL people weren't caught off guard by the Dante Moore decision, but I do wonder now how that changes the math on Ty Simpson, if at all.
Well, Mendoza and Dante Moore would have gone 1 and 2 and would have been immediate starters, right? You're picking that high. You don't have a quarterback. You insert these guys in there and you play them, right? Ty Simpson, again, it all comes down to where he's drafted. And you're right. Can an NFL team show restraint? Because, again, this is just my opinion, this isn't a player who you insert as your day one starter. He's a guy that I think needs a bridge quarterback and time to learn instead of throwing him right in there. So that's where it's all going to fall. And these guys, and understandably so, they have all the confidence in the world in their abilities that they can make the transition. And they absolutely should have that thought process. That's why a lot of times it takes a good support group to kind of advise and administer, a thought process along the way. But it will come down to where Ty Simpson gets picked, as long as, again, I think if he's not inserted in the starting lineup right away.
For whatever it's worth, down the stretch of the season, as Ty Simpson did struggle a bit, he talked about playing through a bulging disc in his back, bursitis in his elbow, had a reaction to some medication that inflamed his stomach, and said he was basically just eating chicken soup and crackers for 2 weeks going into the Auburn game in the SEC championship, where we did see the play slip some. So maybe a healthy Ty Simpson is closer to the guy that we saw in the middle of the year, and things can change there. For the New York Jets, a lot of people are going to enjoy latching on to the joke that, of course, Dante Moore would rather come back and play for the Oregon Ducks than he would the New York Jets this upcoming season. Elsewhere in New York, though, high-stakes poker for the New York Giants today, as they've got John Harbaugh in the building now, his first in-person interview with the New York Giants today, the most sought-after coach of this cycle, who we know has already had meetings digitally with people, but now getting first contact here. And for what it's worth, Dad, the New York Giants, right now, the first team, I believe, to satisfy the Rooney Rule, so are actually in a position to hire John Harbaugh. And I've seen the refrain from everybody, from all the New York media, saying you can't let him get out of the building.
Right?
Do you think he does make it out of the building, or do we walk out of today with the first hire of this cycle?
Listen, he's going to get paid a lot of money no matter where he goes. So I don't think money is going to be the issue. It's going to be about what he thinks about ownership, management, and the roster, right? And the roster is a good-looking roster with Jackson Dart, with your left tackle, with the pass rush capabilities of that D-line. Getting Cam Scatterboo back. We'll see if Cam's a number one every down back or not, but still, what he brings to the Giants. The roster is good, a young quarterback that you're counting on. They seem to have all the pieces in place. But again, there are 9 spots available out there. Some he won't even consider, and others that he may. So I don't think they can make an offer he can't refuse, because he's going to get that offer, and he knows it, everywhere else. It's going to be the sell job the Giants did from a management. And listen, Joe Shane's the GM. Does Harbaugh have any relationship with him? What does he think about working with Joe Shane, as the GM? So that's an issue as well. What's the work relationship going to be like?
Yeah, to your point, you're not just marrying the quarterback in these situations. That people have talked about Atlanta, Tennessee, and New York as some of the favorites to land John Harbaugh, where, Cam Ward, rookie quarterback who played well in adverse circumstances last year, Jackson Dart in Atlanta, it's a little more difficult with the Michael Penix situation coming off injury, but you're weighing all that also against the GM, Mike Borgonzi in Tennessee. What's the relationship like there? Is Atlanta appealing because they did clean house? So now you're going to be a more part of that process to the extent that John Harbaugh wants to have in building that roster. This has seemed like the obvious marriage since John Harbaugh came loose on the market. I wouldn't be stunned at all if we're talking about in a few hours John Harbaugh being announced or being reported as the next head coach of the New York Giants. And if it doesn't happen there, I'd say Atlanta probably next on the pecking order, given all the advantages that we just talked about. But New York has always felt like an easy now kiss moment for Harbaugh and this organization.
I agree. And there are teams that know they're not going to get Harbaugh, so they're going to be chasing other prospective head coaches. But for the top half of teams that are looking for a head coach, they're waiting for this domino to fall, right? Atlanta, I'm sure, is waiting. I'm sure they are wanting to have an in-person. Tennessee as well, as you mentioned. Those are the next two teams that have quarterbacks. Again, as you mentioned, you're right, difficult with Penix and the injury. But they're waiting to see if they have a shot at Harbaugh. So if Harbaugh signs, the quicker that decision is made, then the other teams start to move on to their second, third, fourth options.
So we've always thought that, but I want to posit this thought because there's one other outstanding domino that I do wonder if people are waiting for to fall, is what's going on with Matt LaFleur and the Green Bay Packers. We heard the reports coming off their loss in the wild card round. Adam Schefter said that Green Bay and Matt LaFleur want to work towards an extension. We still haven't heard anything about that expansion, especially not from Green Bay's side of things. And so I do wonder if maybe some people are waiting around for LaFleur as well, because we talked about the skeleton key and all this, right? The conversation around how you approach your young quarterback, the notion of having to constantly be ready for your offensive coordinator to be poached. Matt LaFleur went into Green Bay and first was able to make it work with a future Hall of Famer and Aaron Rodgers, where he likely wasn't going to get a lot of credit, but then was able to make it work in a very different way and help develop their young quarterback in Jordan Love. It's the key that everyone is looking for, and so he'd be incredibly valuable if Green Bay decides to move on. So I do wonder if any of these parties involved are also waiting for him.
Well, maybe waiting for him, or are some of the higher profile going to have their pick coaches like a John Harbaugh waiting to see if the Packers job opens up?
Sure. Forgetting
the Matt LaFleur side, but the Packers job, all of a sudden, you have a young, excellent quarterback in Jordan Love. You have an excellent defense, provided Micah Parsons comes back healthy. You have a pretty good veteran team there. So maybe that's a thought process for Harbaugh as well, if, in fact, he doesn't sign with the Giants today.
Yeah, would be fascinating. Again, for my money, I think Matt LaFleur is back in Green Bay. I think everything that we just said about how he would be viewed by other organizations is probably how he should still be viewed by Green Bay, even if they haven't had the high-end success that they're hoping for. So I think that could smooth out and make this picture a lot clearer. And who knows, maybe at the end of the day, at the end of the show, maybe we'll have our first hire of this NFL coaching cycle here. Plenty more still to come on the show. We got to wonder if Anthony Davis is on the move today. But let's take... Welcome back in GG's. Let's get to the hardwood for some big-time action. This one, a buzzer beater in college basketball. Wisconsin rallies to beat Minnesota at the buzzer. An incredible bucket by John Blackwell, the three-pointer, to go along with his other 27 points as Wisconsin overcame an 11-point second-half deficit to take down Minnesota for a 10th straight time on Tuesday night. The Blackwell game winner came after Cade Tyson, who scored 14, hit a three with 5 seconds left in the game to tie this one up. Just an incredible effort from the Badgers on both sides of this one. Meanwhile, in the NBA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the Oklahoma City Thunder, considered by most to be the best team in the NBA, had revenge on their minds, going 0-3 against the San Antonio Spurs through the early portion of the season. They got them on their home court and went off. SGA, the reigning MVP, sensational in this win. The matchup between Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren on the inside created plenty of theater and true malice, Dad. Like, we talked about this yesterday. I don't really know why or what's gone into it. It feels deeply personal between Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren in the way that it looks. It kind of reminds me of those videos of two giraffes fighting, their long-ass necks going out there and making it happen. But that gave way to Jalen Williams in the second half playing a phenomenal game for Oklahoma City, and SGA really setting the tone for the jump that despite the presence of the 7'4" or whatever he is, Wembanyama, they were going to get to the rack and get theirs early and often.
I would hope at some point with Wemby and Chet that if they truly want to square off, that the league would let them. That the league would just say, all right, everybody back off. Let these guys go. And as you mentioned, it would be like two giraffes fighting. It would be the reach. They could be standing 10 feet away and score with a punch. It would be amazing just to watch these two in a one-on-one fight. But, I don't want to, act like I'm a pugilist or anything. I just like to see good competition. Maybe it leads to fights. We'll see. But, this was a big win for Oklahoma City, right? First win out of the 4 attempts against San Antonio. Gilgeous-Alexander goes for his 111th consecutive game of scoring 20 points. And OKC did it without Isaiah Hartenstein and Lou Dort. So they had 2 of their starters out, and they were still able. They were led this game, 95-76 going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it was a 40-24 run in the third that kind of kickstarted the party on this. But we know the NBA is a game of runs. The Spurs were able to get it down to 12 late. But credit to OKC, who continues to be, and this is probably the formula for how you do this, extremely physical with Victor Wembanyama overall. The amount of times that we saw him hitting the deck in this game because OKC was making sure to get into his body, and you can debate that with the officiating and all this and how that goes down. But predicting where both of these teams are likely going to end up, which is potentially deep postseason runs right now. We'll see if the Spurs can hold off the Nuggets once Jokic comes back. They've been sensational with Nikola Ryden-Pine because of the injury right now to be able to hold their spot at the 3 seed. We know the West is full of competition, but this has continued to look like a Western Conference Finals preview. And if you get there and you're Victor Wembanyama, you got to know and be prepared for the fact that we know it's an extremely physical brand of basketball in the postseason. And so how he continues to respond to this, since OKC, they can deny it all they want, say it's just another game. This one seemed like a very personal retort to what had happened over Christmas and through into the new year.
Yeah, they play for the last time, February 4th, the last time they meet this year. And let's hope Wemby, stays, knock on wood, injury-free. All the guys, really. But, big men certainly can have trouble staying injury-free. So you hope that he can stay injury-free. And you're right. It's the 2 of these teams plus Denver that are really the upper echelon of the Western Conference. We talk about the depth, Minnesota, Houston, if they can make a run, the Lakers, if they depending, see what they do, possibly at the trade deadline. So there is some depth there, but if you make me pick right now, I would probably say it'd be OKC and Denver as the top 2 teams in the West.
I would agree, and I think last night was one of the first times you saw why in this matchup. In the midst of that run in the second half by Oklahoma City, where Jalen Williams really started to put his foot down on the gas, it looked like all of a sudden the Spurs started to press, and a little bit of that lack of maturity in big moments, just because they haven't had a ton of them in Victor Wembanyama's tenure yet. You saw everyone kind of looking around for who was going to stop the bleeding. Was it going to be De'Aaron Fox? Was it going to be your rookie Dylan Harper? Could it be Wemby, as they fronted and made getting him the ball really difficult? And in that moment, I said, there's the championship medal. There's the Oklahoma City credit that they rightly deserve for how they've handled themselves over the last couple seasons. So fun box office cliche. I would sign up for 7 of those in a heartbeat. I'd sign up for Countdown Live, presented by Prime, hosted by our guy Stan Verrett. He can give you plenty more great information, maybe the tail of the tape, the reach, height, and weight for Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren in the fight that my dad desperately wants to see on pay-per-view. All that coming up right after us, 5:30 p.m. Eastern, here on Golic and Golic. Coming up next, though, let's talk about the fight we're going to see in the NFC West this weekend. Tariq Woolen from the Seahawks with us here on Golic and Golic. Welcome back to Golic Golic. Big weekend coming up, the divisional round of the NFL, one of the most enjoyable weekends in all of football. And I have to imagine a nice release for the guys that were sitting at home with the 1 seed that you worked so hard for, but having to sit around and watch everyone else play football while you're getting ready to go. So our next guest, one of the men, the beneficiary of that week of rest, Seahawks cornerback Tariq Woolen, kind enough to join us now, the 1 seed NFC West champion, Seattle Seahawks, I should say, and put some respect on their name here. Tariq, good to see you, man. How you doing?
Yes, sir. Hey, I'm doing good. Just got done with a little walkthrough, and I'm chilling. It's lunchtime, so ready to eat a little bit.
There we go. Well, we'll get you through this into the chow line here in short order. But you mentioned the walkthrough. What's practice like getting ready for a team that you're seeing for the 3rd time this year and just saw as recently as Week 18? Like, what kind of challenge is that?
Honestly, just a challenge of you versus you, your discipline and just making sure you hone in on the things that you may have missed the first time you played them or even the second time you played them. So just hone in on the little things for real and just continue to build off of, from the last game.
But listen, you've for a couple of years now, you've played them twice a year. Is it more game plan X's and O breakdown, or is it really more, hey, just getting to know the person you're playing against because you see them so much?
A little half and half, just because in the playoffs, teams they bring out plays you may not seen before, or they run the same play that they had success on, just in a different version of that play in a different formation. So, it's a little bit half and half.
Well, certainly the half on your guys' side has been sensational, that being the Seahawks defense this year. And I know being as great as you guys have been, it invites a lot of comparisons. There was a recent Seahawks defense with a great name in the Legion of Boom that a lot of people want to bring up. And I know you guys have been clear about distinguishing yourself from that. How would you describe the identity of the 2025 Seahawks defense?
Dude, just relentless and committed, man. I feel like we just shown throughout this whole season, no matter if you're a starter or not, you go out there and you play, you're going to put everything on the line. I feel like we know that as a defense, and we go out there and we just try to play every play relentlessly and, just be committed to the task at hand. But also it's like a brotherhood. I feel like every game makes us closer, and I feel like every moment that we done had, from the good to the bad, to the stressful ones to the fun ones, I feel like it just made us closer.
So Mike Macdonald, the head coach now for a couple of years, obviously a defensive coach. His defense, what has been different about his defense than the defenses you were a part of before in Seattle?
Honestly, I just feel like in this defense, man, I just feel like it's one of the more harder defenses, just because it's a lot more detail to it. But also, you're gonna learn a lot of knowledge in this defense, because you're coming with you're coming from a great head coach, and also it's a defense that has different looks as well. So, I feel like my knowledge of the game has picked up in this defense, but also, from the past defenses, there's a couple similarities, of course, but in this one, we play a lot more tighter to things, and a little bit more man-to-man coverage.
Well, you mentioned what it challenges you from the neck up in this defense. Got to make it hard, I'm sure, for young guys, and you guys have had one in your room in the defensive backfield in one of your top picks, Nicky Manwari, who's really come on strong as the season's gone along. Yeah. What's the area you think he's grown the most in during his rookie season?
Just like his mentality, man. I feel like he's matured. Football is a game where you gotta have a little toughness. You know what I'm saying? And you may get like a little nick, or you might get a bruise or banged up, and you just got to find different ways to play around it and stuff like that. And I feel like that's what he did. He came out first game, made a great play, and, he ended up hurting his ankle. And, just seeing him throughout that process and seeing him stay committed, go through his routine and, eventually come back and, be a force on our defense is pretty cool.
So, again, third time you're going to play San Francisco this year. What problems does their offense pose?
They got a quarterback. Brock is a quarterback. He uses his legs, uses his arm. Great O-line. You got a big Trent. That's the head of the O-line. And then you got a running back, McCaffrey, that can literally, catch the ball out the backfield. He can make guys miss, physical runner. But just schematically, it all starts from the head of the snake, Coach Shanahan. He's one of the great masterminds when it comes to offenses, and you just got to come prepared to, the tight end game, because they use tight ends a lot, and you guys just got to be aware of the fullbacks and stuff like that, making sure guys ain't popping out the ground. But just versus these guys, you just got to be disciplined, take it a play at a time, and just be physical.
You said it. I mean, a lot of people on the outside talk about, Kyle Shanahan's offense and the different things, but for someone that knows them better than 99% of the population, what is unique about the way that Kyle specifically calls offense?
Shoot, like I said, using the tight end game, man. I feel like tight end is a position, some people forget about, just because, you're in the trenches as well. But at the same time, he does a great job of making you look one way, and then the ball and the play is going the whole other way, So he got, plays that deceive your eyes a little bit. So that's why I say you got to be focused versus him.
Yeah, the big change. George Kittle obviously not going to be there. Jake Ton just takes his spot.
Yeah.
How about, listen, you played in front of crowds everywhere, college, pro. What makes the 12th man so special in Seattle?
I feel like just his history. It's known for being loud. It's known for, being, the greatest fans there is. So I just feel like the history, and just being able to play in front of them now, it's a blessing for real, just because, whenever it's a home game, especially a big game like the one that's coming, they're going to show out and be a factor.
No doubt, and I know they're frothing at the mouth to get to this game, as I'm sure you guys probably are. Like, what was Wild Card Weekend like for you? Sitting at home with the 1 seed, did you watch the other games? Did you kind of take time to get away? How'd you approach that?
Sure, yeah, I just chill. I was here in Seattle, chill, played the game, and then as I played the game, just watched the other teams play, and just wanted to see, how defenses play. Whenever I watch some of the football teams and I watch some of the games, I just like to, see some of the stuff the defense is doing and see how they play different plays and different scenarios.
Well, we're excited to see how your guys' defense plays this weekend, man. It's been fun to watch all year, and we know you guys got big things in store coming up. So thanks so much for the time. Good luck this weekend. We'll be excited to watch you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Appreciate you, Double G's. Most definitely.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Reek. All right, Double G's, we're going to have to run with that going forward. In the meantime, while we trademark that for us here, this game, so round 3, like we mentioned, between the 49ers and the Seahawks. The Seahawks do have the rest, and the 49ers do have some good news on the injury front, right? Ricky Pearsall back as a limited participant at practice. D. Winters in the same boat. Fred Warner, his practice window has opened as he's been injured for the vast majority of the season. I'm not sure I believe he can be ready for this weekend and this kind of game, but at the same time, it's something to get excited about after losing George Kittle in the last game and knowing your offense is going to take a big hit. That being said, Dad, I just don't see the path forward against this Seahawks defense, where the last time we saw them in week 18, this 49ers rushing attack that I think had been at its best the back half of the season with Christian McCaffrey got completely swallowed whole by, I know the Jags technically had the number 1 rush defense in yards per game in the NFL. This is the best rush defense in the National Football League, and I think it's going to make it really hard for them to win the game the same ways they have been lately. You're muted.
That's my fault. For San Francisco, they really haven't had a great running game all year. It ranked 24th in the league for the year. Christian McCaffrey really used more in the passing game because he is such a mismatch issue, whether coming out of the backfield in the slot or at wide receiver. That's going to be the job of the Seattle defense, is to stop him from getting touches in the passing game, because the running game has not been going that well. And defensively for San Francisco, again, least amount of sacks, just 20. So they have not been able to get to the quarterback. Only 6 interceptions as well, not really taking the ball away, have 10 fumble recoveries, so 16 takeaways overall. But this defense just doesn't have the bite to it that it's had. And we know the Seattle defense does. So I'll continue to say defense, especially this good, like this defense, Houston defense, Denver defense, wins championships. And I think in this game, I agree with you. I just don't know if San Francisco is going to be able to muster enough against this consistent Seattle defense.
You're right. McCaffrey had no doubt been more of a potent receiving threat for most of the year, but at the end of the season, right, it had surged a bit against Indianapolis, 117 yards on the ground, against the Bears, 140, and then 23 yards against Seattle in week 18 before the wild card round where he mustered 48 on 15 carries, and it didn't look so sweet anymore. And we talked about it the other day, like, that absence of George Kittle looms large in that. Now, I think Trent Williams was injured for that Seattle game as well. I think that was the one where he got hurt on like the first play of the game. But having George not out there really limits what you could do. Like Kyle Shanahan in this offense, they want to live in 21, right? They want Christian McCaffrey and Juice out there and Kittle at tight end to present the options that Reek was talking about. And when you lose him, there just aren't a lot of tight ends that on their best day are as potent blocking and catching the ball as George Kittle is.
monster loss. Now, Jake Tonjes, when Kittle was out with a hammy early in the season, Tonjes came in and did a nice job. You know, he got his opportunity, and he was making the most of it. But again, he's not George Kittle. What George Kittle can do between him and Christian McCaffrey working the middle of the field is just something that's fantastic to see, especially in a Kyle Shanahan offense, which loves to motion, which loves to figure out coverage. This is a great cat and mouse matchup with Kyle Shanahan and Mike Macdonald, right? Having one of the best, if not the best, defense in the NFL against an offensive genius in Kyle Shanahan of how they're going to match up to one another, what Kyle Shanahan can extract from his pre-snap motions from this defense, and what the defense, how well a defense can disguise. That's the most important thing as a former defensive player. We did it a lot when I was in Philadelphia under Buddy Ryan. We would give one look and have to hold it and not get fooled into or snap counted into giving it away, which is so much what you see quarterbacks trying to do, not only hard count a defense, but have a defense give away what they're really going to do. And so it's incumbent on the Seattle defense to stay in their disguise until the snap.
And that's one thing Mike Macdonald coach defenses have been elite at, have been the best in football over the last 4 or so years between his time in Baltimore and now his time in Seattle. So you're absolutely right. And for Kyle Shanahan and company, it is interesting because I have thought in recent years, and we've seen the team like the Los Angeles Rams kind of show, the blueprint for beating a team like that is to go right down State Street and just beat them up the middle. And I don't know if the 49ers are in position to do that right now. The flip side of this on the other side is, you mentioned Charles Cross healthy for the Seahawks right now. I think I saw was either a limited or full participant in practice against a 49ers defense that just cannot get pressure on the quarterback right now. Now, you can still do things, and we've seen Rob Saleh do in trying to disguise and change the picture for a quarterback in Sam Darnold, who, like, he's your path to victory. And it's no disrespect to Sam Darnold, who has acquitted himself well overall in the last 2 seasons. But if you're looking for holes in it, it's, do you get the bad day of this Seattle rushing attack, which last time against the 49ers looked really good for both Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet? And then can you get Sam Darnold to give you the football? So if this Seahawks team could come in and pick up where they left off with the rushing attack last time, I just struggle to see a world where they're going to get Sam Darnold in enough positions to make a mistake to win this game if you're San Francisco.
Yeah, and how well does San Francisco defense Jackson Smith-Njigba, right? Who had more than double the amount of catches. A.J. Banner was second with 52. Smith-Njigba had 119. Then you had Cooper Kupp had 47. So the ball, like for the Rams, the ball is going to Puka Nacua. The ball is going to Christian McCaffrey. The ball is going to Jackson Smith-Njigba, which is impressive. And you have to give a lot of love, like we did to Kyle Shanahan, to Sean McVay, and to Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator who finds ways to get Smith-Njigba the ball, even though he is the most. He had 163 targets this year. The next closest to him was 70. So he's going to get the ball. So that's where it's incumbent on the OC to put him in position to be able to get the ball.
Man, I tell you what, one time for John Schneider and the scouting department in Seattle for what they do at wide receiver, I get draft the Ohio State wide receiver is usually pretty idiot-proof logic for most people involved. I think we've seen that proven across the sport. But to go from an era where obviously for years there you had Tyler Lockett, then you brought DK Metcalf over, these guys that were always such incredible pass catchers, and you let DK go and get his money elsewhere in Pittsburgh, and you went all in on this idea that Jackson Smith-Njigba could be the guy, and he's supernovaed in a way that makes you look like geniuses this year. So big weekend and a big opportunity for Seattle as the 1 seed. Coming up, the old rest versus rust debate that I'm sure we'll have ad nauseum the rest of the week. But coming up next, no debates in South Bend on who's going to be the head coach next year. Marcus Freeman took to the podium for the first time since the end of the Irish season. We'll hear from him next on Golic Golic. Welcome back to Golic Golic. A big weekend in the NFL means we need some big guests to help us out. Pro Football Hall of Famer Jim Kelly going to join us tomorrow on the show to look ahead of the Bills matchup in Denver this weekend against the the Broncos. Don't want to miss that one. As always, Golic and Golic, 3:30 to 5:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on FanDuel Sports Network. Mike Golic Jr. here with you guys. It was an interesting offseason for Notre Dame after the final whistle sounded, between the team being left out of the college football playoff on Selection Sunday, then opting out of their bowl game following that, and then the overtures for Notre Dame's head coach Marcus Freeman, not only from other colleges, but from the NFL level as well, where we heard a number of reported teams interested in his services at the next level. And so today, for the first time since the end of the season, Marcus Freeman took the podium in South Bend and had this to say about the process of NFL teams coming after him this offseason.
Head coach at Notre Dame. And I've said this before, that individual recognition, individual success, NFL interest, those are all reflection of team success, right? And where this football program is. And you know, Pete, I've used some of the interest from the NFL to personally gain wisdom from maybe some of the GMs or the front office executives that you get a chance to talk to about your players, but also about, you know, what they view as a successful coach. Maybe it's an NFL coach, but what are some of the things they've seen that have made a coach successful in their organization or franchise, and maybe not so successful? And so I utilize these opportunities through conversations to gain knowledge myself, to be the best head coach I can be of the Notre Dame football program. And so, again, that's where my mindset is. And I don't control the noise, but again, I know the noise that's in my head and where my focus is.
All right, lots to get to coming off this. Go ahead.
Let me start off and say, first, I don't know if that's a great-looking pullover or if it's just great looking because it's on him. And if I were to try it on, it wouldn't look as good. So that's why I hesitate getting it.
Yeah, no, understandably so. It's always been the difficulty with the Marcus Freeman collection at the Notre Dame bookstore and trying to figure out if it is actually something you can pull off or if only one of the best looking coaches in college football can pull that off. Also looks like he's rocking a sunglasses tan, which makes me wonder, tinfoil hat on here, how much interviewing he actually did with these NFL jobs that were supposedly coming at him. But in all seriousness, we knew that was a possibility coming off this season. It certainly seems to be one that, based off the reporting from NFL folks, was very real, even into this last week. After Marcus Freeman had publicly announced he was coming back, we heard reports of an agreement, an addition to his contract that he signed last year and the extension. Dad, do you believe this is going to be something that, despite what Marcus Freeman said there, is a reality for Notre Dame almost each and every offseason from here on out?
Well, again, it all depends on Marcus Freeman. Does Marcus Freeman want to test himself at the highest level, which is the NFL? That I don't know. Only he and his family really know that. And if he does, someday he'll go. But there are 9 openings now. So if he's choosing not to go now, and he certainly is a sought after potential head coach. Maybe he just doesn't feel like doing it now. Maybe he will in a couple of years. Maybe he will next year. I don't know. Or maybe he is a guy that's like, I just want to be in college. It's something, again, only he knows. We don't know what level he wants to end up at.
So he was asked about a lot of this, right? And Marcus said that he hoped this conversation was happening every year because it means things are going there. We kind of heard that stanza from him towards the end of the season. But he was asked if he has interest in coaching at the NFL level. And I'll just paraphrase and say he kind of gave a non-answer to it there. And it's no disrespect to Marcus Freeman. I would leave the door open on that too if I were him, for a litany of reasons going forward. It makes no sense for him to shut the door on that if that's something that truly in his heart of heart he does court, and if not, if he wants to have as a point of leverage to ensure that he keeps getting the things that he wants. But right now, Dad, in terms of a decision come back, you can understand it because he is getting most of what he wants, and he's got in 2026 a roster that looks like it's really ready to go. You've got a new football facility getting ready to open up on campus. You had a stellar high school recruiting class. And now, after a week of people all wondering, hey, why hasn't Notre Dame had any portal commits? The faucet fully turned on Monday morning this week as Notre Dame landed a number of high-profile commitments from other big-time schools around here. Francis Brew, one of the most sought-after out of Pitt, Mylan Graham and Quincy Porter, two Ohio State wide receivers, a former Notre Dame commit in Alabama edge rusher Keon Keeley to go along with DJ McKinney, and a kicker, which, praise Jesus, will be able to make extra points in South Bend this fall. But, Dad, 24/7 does a composite rating of your high school class combined with your portal class that right now has Notre Dame's listed as number one for the offseason. So Marcus Freeman and this staff have once again gone out and made this happen. And you see the returning skill talent. I don't think that that's a coincidence, considering who you've got returning at quarterback and CJ Carr, who per FanDuel Sportsbook open tied with Arch Manning for the best odds to lead for the Heisman Trophy next year.
Listen, Notre Dame and Marcus has always said they minor in the portal. They don't major in it, so you're never going to see 20, 25 guys in the portal or bringing into Notre Dame. You're just not going to see it. And quite honestly, the best name there I saw was the kicker from Purdue, who was 15-17 last year kicking field goals. So that's something Notre Dame desperately needed.
Desperately needed there. One other thing, Marcus Freeman at the beginning of his press conference addressed were the allegations of battery stemming from a local high school wrestling meet in Mishawaka that his son Vinny was a part of over the weekend. The St. Joseph's County prosecution office declined to press charges against Marcus Freeman stemming from that incident with a New Prairie High School wrestling assistant going back to January 3rd. Marcus addressed it basically thanking most of the reporters in the room for waiting for all the facts to come out, chastising the one outlet who didn't, but reiterating that all he did in that moment was respectfully protect his family, that being his son and his wife also on the scene as well.
Well, let me just say as a parent, first, the video, they had video of it, and while the complainant, the assistant coach, said it was a two-handed push that Marcus had, shows clearly there was not. And from the reports, this assistant coach, who was an All-American wrestler at Purdue, tried to get Vinny to wrestle at his high school, and the Freemans declined. And this assistant coach supposedly was saying things to Vinny, the kid, walking off the mat. Now, Mike, you know me and you know your mother. It's not Marcus I would have worried about, and just like it wouldn't be me you'd worry about. You worry about Joanna, his wife, and you worry about your mother when somebody is verbally attacking your kid. That would be what I would be worried about if I was that dude, the wife.
It's what makes the restraint shown by all parties involved, to your point on the video, that completely exonerates him in this case. That restraint there, pretty remarkable given the circumstances. So glad that is all cleared up and in the past. Coming up next, the future in Florida seems bright. The new head coach, Jon Sumrall, going to join us to talk about what's next for the Gators here on Golic Golic. Hour number 2, halfway point of the week. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here at Golic and Golic. Still plenty more to get to in the show. Jon Sumrall, the head coach at Florida, going to join us here. Another linebacker turned head coach, Dad. The former Kentucky linebacker goes from Tulane to Florida. I'm always fascinated. We just talked about Marcus Freeman in South Bend, who's a former linebacker himself. How those mentalities of the different positions kind of show up in the way that these guys coach.
Well, listen, when you always say the team takes on the mentality of the coach and you have a linebacker, you know the kind of team you're going to play. If nothing else, you're going to be sore after the game, win or lose.
Yep, certainly Florida Gators fans, that is music to their ears as they're having to watch an in-state rival go on and play in the national championship right now. So plenty to get to there, but plenty to get you caught up on now. Let's get to our three-point stand. 3 big stories around sports. And Red Sox fans, hallelujah! They've agreed to a 5-year, $130 million deal with the lefty, Ranger Suarez, according to ESPN, confirming multiple reports. The 30-year-old had been dealing for the Phillies since 2021 with a 3.25 ERA in the last 5 seasons. The deal, the first major league free agent for the Red Sox this season, days after they got outbid for Alex Bregman by the Chicago Cubs, who then gave him a 5-year, $175 million deal with a no-trade clause that apparently Boston wouldn't match. So the Red Sox fans have something to celebrate there, as does Adam Thielen announces his retirement from the NFL after 12 seasons playing for the Vikings, the Panthers, and finishing with the Steelers. The 35-year-old had said this would be his last season back when the Vikings waived him in December. And what a great story. Born in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, played his college ball at Minnesota State University, Mankato, and then spent the first 9 years of his career playing for the hometown Vikings. So enjoy retirement. An incredible golfer that I'm sure we'll see in Tahoe again soon. And John Harbaugh set to conduct his first in-person interviews with the Vikings today in New York. We know Harbaugh, the belle of the ball of this offseason coaching cycle. The interest, it appears, lies with the Giants, the Titans, and the Atlanta Falcons. The Giants, for what it's worth, in position to potentially offer and sign him to a deal today if he would accept it, because they've satisfied the Rooney Rule in their process in searching for their next head coach. So we still are on Harbaugh watch right now. I know they sent the team private jet to go pick him up and bring him there, and they're going to wine and dine him. I wonder how similar these are to like recruiting visits. We just got done with portal season for these guys in college. John Harbaugh's been doing this for decades at the highest level. He's seen about everything, but he's kind of like a married guy that just went through a divorce, right? He's back in the dating market. It's been a little while, and now he's on the apps, and there's all this stuff that he has to account for that he's never heard of before. So this has to be kind of exciting for him.
Well, I'm sure there's some part of him that thinks it is, but there's some part of him, I'm sure, that misses the continuity of him possibly going into his 19th year in Baltimore. And I mean, when's the last time he sat down for an interview? He's usually the interviewee, the interviewer, when he's going to, bring in another assistant coach. Now he's on the other end of the desk, right? Being asked. And I wonder how an interview goes with John Harbaugh as opposed to like a Clint Kubiak, someone who's looking to become a head coach for the first time, of just how different those interviews are.
Well, yeah, again, we always hear about this process as people are always so obsessed with how a guy interviews, the famous statement or bantered around during the end of Eric Bieniemy era in Kansas City. But with those guys, we hear about, binders, presentations, how I'm going to do everything, especially for the guys that are first timers who haven't done this. For John Harbaugh, I mean, you've got the tape right there. Your living resume was existing at or near the top of the AFC North for the last 2 decades.
Yeah, is he just walking in, nothing in his hand, no briefcase, no papers, sitting down, throw his legs up, feet up on the desk and say, okay, what do you got? I mean, what could you possibly be asking him?
I'd imagine the meeting's going something like this. He walks in and sits down. The New York Giants immediately place one handcuff on his right hand, the other attached to the chair, and they begin the process of trying to force him to sign that damn paper and stay there as their head coach.
Oh, and I guess I'll tell you what I think is the big difference of a John Harbaugh or a first-time head coach. The person doing the interviewing is trying to sell Harbaugh on being the coach of the Giants, where a normal interview, especially with a first-timer, that person is trying to say why they should be the head coach. Right now, Harbaugh is just kind of kicking back and listening.
Yeah, it's got to be a very different experience, because while this is going on right now, right, we've had all these interviews simultaneously taking place, and Harbaugh to New York was always one of the easy ones when he first came loose, saying, hey, New York's got kind of the perfect combination, a good roster position, an organization that's well-respected and has won Super Bowls this century, and a young quarterback that you can build around. You also, in the meantime, have had some of the other jobs that we pointed out. And I saw Adam Schefter tweet an hour ago, the Ravens have completed their interview with Chargers defensive coordinator Jesse Minter, who was one of the first guys that we thought of for that job after John Harbaugh was fired. The Pittsburgh Steelers, who are getting ready to go through this process for the first time in a while, have now requested a head coach interview with Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores, who kind of fits the archetype there. But all of them have their different complications. Brian Flores, another guy that's been an NFL head coach before. But you're right, the nature of these interviews going to be very different right now. And the Giants, again, the desperation, I'm sure, to make sure that they're the ones that land Harbaugh now that they've got him in the building has to be at an all-time high.
And it has to be, don't let him out, right? Because while there are 9 openings, he is not going to be up for all 9 of them. He's only looking at a couple of them. But the Giants do not want to let him get to those next couple. So it's obviously up to Harbaugh because, like I said before, it's not like it's going to be a money thing. Everybody's going to offer him a lot of money. It's the structure of the program that he is going to be looking for. So it will be very interesting if he leaves the facility.
A lot easier process for all these guys, including the assistants, because the NFL has strict rules on how you can interview and when coaches that are still playing on certain teams. Our college brothers in arms do not have that same luxury. And look no further than what the calendar looked like for Jon Sumrall this past year. The former Tulane coach got to the regular season finale here, was named the Florida head coach at the end of November, had to go through signing day, preparing for the college football playoff with Tulane as well, before ultimately they lose to Ole Miss in the CFP. All right, very excited to hear from a man that was firmly in the mix late this college football season, every way you can be. Jon Sumrall, the head coach of the Florida Gators, kind enough to join us now here. And, Coach, we appreciate the time and what has been, I know, a whirlwind couple months for the start to your tenure at Florida. You get the job back at the end of November. You're still coaching at Tulane at the time through a college football playoff appearance while high school recruiting is going on, while the portal opens up. So are you finally getting sleep now at this point in your Florida Gators head coaching tenure? How's that going?
Yeah, maybe a little bit more regular sleep, not a lot more sleep, but maybe a little bit more scheduled between normal hours of like 11 and 4 or 5 a.m. There was definitely a stretch there where going to sleep at 1 or 2 a.m. and waking up at 4 a.m. was kind of more normal. We're past that, I hope. But yeah, it's nice to have one job, not two. I can tell you that.
I'd have to imagine. I mean, as you maybe have time to stop, I don't know how much, and look back on that stretch now where you were part of a group of coaches kind of going through something that felt unprecedented. You, Bob Chesney, James Madison, and certainly the Ole Miss staff, well publicized, pulling double duty there. What do you remember about that time period the most now in hindsight?
Yeah, I think probably just the difficulty of like switching hats, and you never knew when a decision from maybe Tulane was going to be needed on something, and you had to do right by that place, that program, those young men there, and then quickly adjust to maybe a phone call where you had to make a quick decision on something on this side over here for Florida that was going to be more about what the future was going to look like. And so just having to navigate maybe both sides and really lead 2 programs at the same time. You know, while I was sitting in New Orleans, Louisiana, getting ready for a practice that was a conference championship Wednesday, but really our game was on Friday, so it was like a Thursday practice. And I was kind of overseeing a signing day at Tulane and at Florida at the same time because Tulane hadn't named a head coach yet. And I was trying to make sure their signing class was held together. So that was probably the one thing I will never forget, is thinking, how chaotic is this? I'm getting ready for a conference championship game, practice, and then trying to make sure 2 schools have a signing day at the same time.
And you were, I think, widely praised for how you handled this whole process, making the donation to Tulane on your way out, sticking by there. We know a lot of people had, thoughts and criticisms about the way Lane Kiffin handled things. But for you, what was it like dealing with the players at Tulane in the midst of all of that, telling these guys about the reality you were facing while still trying to do right by them?
Yeah, I've always been really transparent with our guys. Going back to last July, I talked to them in the summer about what player movement, what coach movement, what all those things look like and how it needed to be handled. And I wanted to handle it the way I said I would, which I feel like I did. Our players at Tulane were absolutely amazing through the entire process. In my conversations with them, their response was very mature, understandable, and really just wanted to go win a conference championship. That was really the biggest challenge in all of this to me was you take a job during conference championship week. And I think in the past, you always felt like if you're playing for a conference championship, that was taboo. That was off the table. That wouldn't even be considered. But when that conference championship game was looming and was also going to impact maybe college ball playoff, then it's like, if I'm going to make a decision on one of these, I have to make a decision now. And so our players were awesome. Our athletic director at Tulane, David Harris, is awesome. He actually texted me today because the check did clear, so the money I sent did come through. He said, thanks again for the check. And then Scott Strickland, the administration at the University of Florida, were great too, and very understandable of like, hey, I want to finish this the right way by where I'm leaving. I think how you started a place matters. How you leave matters just as much, if not more.
No, and you certainly left it better than you found it, which is always an amazing testament, to the work that you've done there. But let's talk about the Florida part now. Once you got to take off that hat as Tulane's head coach, in a day and age where, because of the landscape we're in right now, people look at it different. I'm sure Curt Cignetti has given lots of people lofty ideas of what you can do in a limited amount of time. So what's the first thing you did when you tried to hit the ground running here as the head coach at Florida down there in Gainesville?
Yeah, well, Sig and I are good friends. He called me on Sunday, and cool to be able to see the success they're having in Indiana. Very proud of him, and respect how he's done things. Man, it's the University of Florida. All right. Now, our expectation here and our standard here is championships and greatness. And that's what attracted me to this job. When I went through the process of taking this job, getting a phone call from a guy like Urban Meyer, and then as you're working through the final stages, taking the job, hearing from Coach Spurrier, like, man, those are pinch yourself moments where you're like, man, this is the University of freaking Florida. Like, what are we talking about? And so for me, it's all about the players. Like I say this all the time. If there were no players, they would have no need for coaches. Okay. And so it's not about me. It's about how do I build the best roster I can for the University of Florida. And once we put that roster together, how do I help every player on that roster become their absolute best in every area of their life and push them, invest in them, challenge them to make sure they grow? And as a coach, my job is to serve and develop the player. That's the whole thing. It's not real complicated. And so we do have an expectation here of having quick success. Like, I'm not okay like going, hey, I hope we can win in 5 years. Now, I want to be winning in 5 years, but I also want to win like every day. And I want to win this year in 2026. Like, that's my urgency. I'm not comfortable like going, hey, I hope it works out in a few years. Like, yeah, I want it to work out in a few years. I want it to work out this freaking year too.
I'd imagine that pressure is always there too when you got guys like Urban Meyer and Spurrier in the phone book there. I'm curious, like, do you got to chase Tim Tebow out of the weight room around there now? Like, is he just always wandering around the halls there too?
Yeah, I've talked to Tebow, man. What a stud. He's not in the building daily. No, we've spoken. I can't wait to have him back to visit with our guys. We do have Brandon Spikes here every day, who played in that same era, a great player from that time frame. And Spikes is around the building and serves our players in a capacity. It's really life skills driven in our Gator Made program. But man, Tebow was awesome as I went through this process of doing this too. And what a great Florida Gator right there, man.
No doubt. And as you try to add to that right now, we're in that player acquisition period. Mentioned you started off in the high school early signing periods going on as you first take the job. The portal's getting ready to close up now. So for you, as far as the strategy in roster building for you at the University of Florida, maybe how that changes based on a jump from Tulane to here.
Yeah, well, it starts with retention. All right. And so the most important players in the world are the ones already in our building. Okay. And so I really focused on trying to retain some key pieces that were already here. The record last year wasn't what anybody wanted it to be here at the University of Florida. 4-8 is not our expectation, but there was some people here that I think were the right people on this roster, a lot of them. And so it was my job first and foremost after we got the signing class done a couple of days after accepting the job was making sure we did everything we could to show the guys that were in-house that wanted to be a part of this moving forward, that this was going to be a place that we're going to have success, and they were going to be a huge part of that success. So the retention component was critical. Getting Jaden Ball back, getting Jaden Woods back, Miles Graham, VB3, Dallas Wilson. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. There's a lot of dudes that made a decision to stay that other people were chasing. All right. And so that's where it starts. And then you have to then identify what holes or maybe gaps you have in your roster, which we have had plenty. Like we're not whole. We're still not whole. I'm still hunting a few more players here at the end of this to make sure we have the best chance to be successful this year. And so you then have to find guys that maybe fit those needs or those holes, and also select the right people that are going to fit the culture you want to build, because you want people that are tough, that love football, that like putting in the work, and that care about the team.
Well, I certainly, that leadership and setting that tempo starts at the top. And like we said, with everything that you've shown so many people in the outside world over the last couple of months and years, I'm sure the folks on the inside are seeing and feeling that right now as you guys get started setting that culture there at Florida. Coach, we can't thank you enough for the time. We know it's a busy time of year, so appreciate you giving up some of it for us. And best of luck going forward. We're excited to watch what you guys build in Gainesville.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you having me on. Go Gators.
Coming up next, let's head to Milwaukee, where those aren't boos. They're definitely boos from the home crowd here. See how Giannis had an interesting response for the home crowd next on Golic Golic. Welcome back to Golic Golic. They say it's root for the home team. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. Apparently that does not apply if you are down 30 at halftime to a Timberwolves team without any of its stars on the court. That is the situation that Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks found themselves in just last night at home. The Bucks, whether it was dead legs coming off another game or whatever you want to say it to, prompted this response from Giannis, who thumbs down and booed his own fan base back in return. Here he was after the game talking about what for him felt like a first.
When people don't believe in me, I don't tend to be with them. I tend to be against them. I tend to do what I'm here to do, what I'm good at, right? I think I'm like a maverick. I've always been that way, so it won't change now. It doesn't matter if I'm at home or away. But yeah, I've never been a part of something like that before, and I don't think it's fair. I don't. But everyone has the opinion to do what they want to do.
Bit of a maverick. Well, actually, Giannis, you're a buck. For now,
you're a buck.
Dot. But in the meantime, in all seriousness, while the double thumbs down to me is one of the iconic celebrations that exists, is this a good look for Giannis in the midst of the entire discussion and framing of this season so far with him?
Listen, you're talking to a guy who played for the Philadelphia Eagles for 6 years. There's no fan base that boos their own team more than the Eagle fans, okay, or Philly fans when your team isn't playing well. And listen, Giannis is human. He says he hasn't dealt with that before. He says, I'm not going to tell them what to do or how they should act when we don't play hard, but also don't tell me how I should react when that happens. So I get it. You're human. Your own crowd is booing you. He's not used to that. We were used to it in Philadelphia. It didn't really affect us. But do you want to turn those into cheers? Are you mad at your fans for booing you? Yeah. In the moment you are, in the heat of the game, this is a team that was down, 30 points at halftime. Even Giannis said, where they were not playing as hard, for whatever reason. But I think because it was his first time, it kind of caught him off guard. But you just got to roll with that stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I always felt some type of way about that, and still do now when home crowds boo their teams. Like, to me, especially when you're a team that does have more to cheer about than most. And for the Bucks with Giannis, there has certainly been that. Like, they've arrived at the rich people problems now, right? Where all of a sudden, if every year's not ending and them potentially being a title contender, you're rightly a little perturbed versus some of the teams that have been bottom dwellers who would kill for the problems that you have now. And so I do always think, while expected in a part of the process, booing your home team is pretty lame. That being said, given the way Giannis has kind of been positioned with this team lately, it just might be less is more time right now. He is beloved in that city. He brought a championship to that city. He's been a multi-time MVP and is still one of the best players on the planet when it comes to what he does in basketball. And I understand him wanting to keep the organization motivated to go and keep adding talent around him to keep him pursuing a championship. But given that that's been swirling around this entire season, one-off night there, like, I get it's a long year, frustrations can run high, but I do just feel like at some point you got to punt and kind of give the party stock line of, hey, I would boo us too. I think that's become one of the best tried and true responses to this for most teams.
Yeah, especially because he admitted they weren't playing as hard. They were getting smoked on the court. So you're kind of admitting, it was an off night. And again, I have no problem with home fans booing. Do you like it as a player? No, you don't like it, but the fans have a right to. They're the ones that pay for their ticket and sit there. You don't have to just be universally cheer for your team. Now, there are some fans that think that you do, no matter what, you're behind your team, and that's fine. Again, I don't have a problem with that either, but I also don't have a problem with if a team deserves to be booed, and everybody has a line for that. That if you want to boo, just like we say when you go to a visiting place, don't let the fans get to you to where you're responding to them. I would say the same thing to your hometown fan. If they boo you, don't let them get to you. Though, as Giannis said, he felt this was kind of the first time that happened, so it probably did catch him off guard a little bit.
And who knows if it is, but Giannis is used to being beloved around there, and this team is also used to being good. Like, on paper, a team that right now is 11th outside of the playoff picture in the Eastern Conference, losing to the 4 seed in the West, doesn't seem like it'd be all that surprising. But then you remember that Anthony Edwards was out with rest. Rudy Gobert was serving a 1-game suspension, and so getting whooped by that version of the Timberwolves probably not going to sit as well in the midst of a season where his mounting potential for a trade has been the only conversation. Like, everyone involved kind of needs a little bit of a breather, I'd say, after this. But the Bucks, no doubt, feel like they're in a free fall right now after last year went awry the way it did. If you want to watch great basketball and you miss it in real time and don't get to boo Giannis yourself, you can boo him on game replays. NBA and NHL fans, if you miss a live game, catch up with game replays on the FanDuel Sports Network app. After the final whistle, you can watch every highlight, every big moment in your choice of 5, 10, or 15-minute condensed games. So just download the FanDuel Sports Network app and get your boo on here. Let them know how bad they stank. Coming up next, nothing stunk about the performance we got from LeBron James last night, how LeBron continues to box out Father Time next on Golic Golic. Welcome back to Golic Golic. Huge one for the Lakers last night. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here. LeBron James and company had lost 3 straight games. We know so much of this year had been clouded by injury to LeBron James, the questions about whether he would play in back-to-backs. Well, last night we got an answer not only of if he would, but how it would look in the process. They get a 141-116 win over the Atlanta Hawks, and LeBron James, a rebound shy of a triple-double, 31 points, 10 assists, and 9 boards in that game here as Austin Reeves been injured. LeBron James getting in where he fits in around Luka Doncic and making it look easy for the 41-year-old, including still able to get up above the rim in ways that just defy anything resembling Father Time. You see now continuing to add to his impressive total and career arcs, even at this advanced age. All right, with that in mind, let's welcome in our next guest, Dan Devine, Yahoo Sports senior NBA writer, co-host of the Big Numbers podcast there. Dan, we've got some really interesting stuff to talk about today, not the least of which is what we just mentioned there. LeBron James coming off another stellar night, given his age, the things that we always factor in, playing on a back-to-back when that had been kind of in doubt by LeBron's own testimony here. So I know it's the lowest hanging fruit, but seeing the performance like we did from him the other night, just how unprecedented does this run continue to be for him?
That's the thing about low-hanging fruit, man. It's delicious. It's right there. You got to go grab it. LeBron doing what he's doing now is preposterous. We're talking about him being not like only the last man standing from the 2003 draft. You've got 2004, you got guys are coming out. 2005, you got Chris Paul, you've got Kyle Lowry. Years of drafts are like going away, and LeBron is still not only just playing, averaging about 22 points, 6 rebounds, and 7 assists per game. The numbers are ticking up. Remember, like he was out to start the season with a sciatica injury, so now he's like gotten through the training camp portion of the schedule. He's shooting 60.5% on twos inside the arc, and so the 3-point shot is coming and going. He's going to get online a little bit with that, but the Lakers offense has remained elite in his minutes. The defense is going to be a concern. We all knew about that, trying to figure out how to retrofit that roster with him and Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves when he's available. But the fact that you're able to see consistent, high efficiency, high volume scoring while also continuing to kind of get in where he fits in. He's not trying to take the ball out of Luka's hands. He's figuring out how to play off ball. The catch and shoot's going to come. But to see this on a night-to-night basis, it bears mentioning on a nightly basis. We've literally never seen something like this. And so what it means for the Lakers as a long-term title contender remains to be seen. But just the actual production on the court, literally historically unprecedented.
Well, yeah, let's look at their long-term possibilities. They're just 2.5. They're just 2 games out of second place in the conference. Everybody following OKC. Yet JJ Redick seems to rip his team more than talk about the good things this team does. Where is this team in relation to the Western Conference?
Listen, you can take the man out of the podcast, but you can't take the podcaster out of the man. He's got to get his takes off. The reality is, and it's almost unbelievable. Yes, the Lakers enter Wednesday's action at 24-14. They have their efficiency differential, their point differential is 0, flat 0. So they're 10 games over 500, but they've got the efficiency differential, the point differential of a 42-win team or 41-win team. So that's wild, and that's like, it feels like one of these things is not like the other. The cleanest way to explain it is they have been a very good offensive team, a bad defensive team, I believe 23rd in points allowed per possession, but in the clutch, they've been elite. They have the best winning percentage in the league in games that have been with scores within 5 points in the final 5 minutes. That winning percentage is 1,000. They have not lost one of those games yet this season. And so you can look at it and say, is that just, that's going to regress to the mean. You can't just win every close and late game over the course of a season, and that'll come back to earth a little bit. And when that does, the team's success will start looking a little bit more like those underlying numbers. The flip side, the glass half full case, if you're a Lakers fan or somebody that's buying into them as a potential postseason issue, is this is built in a little bit to, we have Luka Doncic, we have LeBron James, we've got Austin Reeves. These guys are, can break a defense down and can be a perimeter playmaker against any defense we're going to have to see. Break down the coverage, collapse it, kick out to another guy who is a high-level playmaker, shot maker, guy that can get downhill and create. So some of that is we feel like we've got the answers to the test in crunch time. Some of it might be a little bit, the coin landing heads 14 straight times, and eventually you're going to wind up with some tails. So the underlying numbers tell you this team is a little bit closer to average than elite. But you don't have to give back the wins you've gotten while outperforming those numbers.
No, but one might say forecasting forward, maybe that prompts you to look into some of the moves you can make around the trade deadline. And LeBron James had to come out and, speaking of podcasting, distance himself from the comments of his agent Rich Paul on a podcast with Max Kellerman, saying that the Lakers should trade Austin Reeves, trade him, bring him a big man to go opposite Luka Doncic, and what they're doing here outside of LeBron constantly having to kind of fight these battles on both fronts. Is that even a realistic possibility at this point for Los Angeles heading towards February?
Well, yeah, I think the specific thing that Rich Paul was talking about in that context was the idea of if Memphis decides they're going into a fire sale situation, there's obviously the John Morant issue to monitor. If Memphis is moving toward a rebuild after moving on from John Morant, could you pluck Jaren Jackson Jr. out of Memphis? And that idea where you sort of zoom out and you think, what kind of big guy do you want around Luka Doncic? The idea of somebody who can score inside but can be a floor spacer, stretch the floor, open up the paint for him to get in there, while also being an elite shot blocker, somebody who has won Defensive Player of the Year. So that idea of a nice kind of guy to pair with Luka Doncic, kind of the best of both worlds of what he'd had over the years in Dallas, right? Like the Kristaps years where you had the floor spacer, and then the Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively, those years where you've got the rim protectors there, the rollers. It would be nice to kind of mix those together. I think they're also both 26 years old, so that idea of you're building for a runway or a future. And the impetus behind that is Austin Reeves has about a $14.9 million player option for next year. He has way outperformed that, so he's going to rip that up. He has the opportunity to hit free agency this summer or sign an extension and say, actually an extension probably wouldn't even get him to the dollar sign he wants to get to, and has played his way into earnings. So the idea, if you're the behind that Lakers pitch, is we would rather reorient with a big than another perimeter player that's going to make it difficult for us to be able to form an elite defense. And that kind of symbol, like, we feel like if we've got Luka, we're going to have a great offense. How do we build out the most complementary team around him? It's kind of a tough sell because Austin Reeves is one of those, like, a real success story in Lakerland. Like, you found him, the scouting department sort of unearthed him, developed him, and now all of a sudden he's a guy who was getting bona fide all-star push earlier in the season and is going to play his way into maybe even a max level contract. Moving on from that guy just because you don't want to be the one to pay it, that could ruffle some feathers. That can rub people the wrong way. Having it come out from your agent on a podcast also seems to ruffle some feathers. Maybe it doesn't make everybody particularly happy about stuff getting out, and then LeBron has to distance himself from it. So my guess is Rob Pelinka, that front office, they're always going to be looking for ways that they can maneuver and try to figure out how to improve the team. I think they're a little more focused, though, on what the long-term situation is. Someone like Jaren Jackson Jr., he's on the extension now. He'd be under team control for a handful of years. That makes sense as like a running buddy for Luka for a number of years. If it's something that's going to add money for the next couple of years without elevating your ceiling or giving you that long-term security, though, that might be a little bit tougher for them to be able to get across the finish line.
So staying on the trades talk, Anthony Davis has a hand injury, not going to have surgery in this month, going to look like 6 weeks, still after the trade deadline. But what are the prospects of him being traded?
I mean, it depends on who you ask, because apparently the idea is Anthony Davis comes out himself and says lies and half-truths about whether I'm going to be out I'm going to need surgery. I'm going to get a second opinion. We're going to see how it goes in terms of when I'm going to be able to be back. If it's 4 to 6 weeks, who knows what the timeline is. And if you are a prospective suitor, when Anthony Davis is on the floor, still capable of having like an elite top 10 level, top 15 level two-way impact, where as a scorer, as an offensive hub, and as somebody who can protect the rim and still defend out in space. The problem is he's not out on the floor all that much. And that's been kind of the calling card of his era in Dallas, is like just not being able to be on the floor for even half the games since his arrival there in the Luka trade. So if you're a suitor and well, the reason to get him now is we think he elevates our ceiling right now. We don't know when we're actually going to get him back. We don't know that we can rely on him to stay on the floor once he does get back. And oh, by the way, he wants a new deal, and he's going to be in the market for a multi-year extension, and he's not going to be looking to take too big a discount on it. It's sort of like the Trae Young situation in Atlanta, where it's like the value proposition for the Hawks a little bit was we get out of having to make that decision and figure out what is the right price point. What's the most palatable deal? How do we build the roster around a guy who we're not sure exactly how he fits in or how we can get the best of both worlds all around him? Anthony Davis is in that spot. He's around even less, and he might be looking for even more money. So if you're Dallas and you're calling around the league and saying like, hey, what do you think? The return you might get is not particularly exciting. And then is that palatable for you to do as the Dallas Mavericks, considering that's the guy you got for Luka Doncic? You can't just say we're going to turn him into, salary cap relief and maybe like a 2032 second rounder. Like that's a tough thing to sell to a fan base that's already had to swallow kind of a lot over the last 365 days. So I think the more likely situation is that Anthony Davis does not get moved, just because it's so much of a mystery box right now what you would be getting on the other side of it. And then if you're Dallas, you can kind of tell yourself the story of, all right, we hold on to him through the deadline. There might be more flexibility around the league, more opportunities for us to make a move in the summertime. At that point, we'll have had a full season of Cooper Flagg, who looks like the absolute goods. Kyrie Irving maybe takes off the whole season, and then we get to go into next season with Cooper Flagg, a healthy ? Anthony Davis, a healthy ? Kyrie Irving, and then whoever we get in the lottery this year. You can at least tell yourself a story on that, and it might be a little bit more palatable than whatever you would get back for AD in this ? Situation right now.
Awesome stuff. As always, check out the Big Number Podcast. Great work over at Yahoo Sports by our buddy Dan Devine. Dan, we appreciate it, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. My pleasure.
Awesome stuff from Dan. Big news in the NFL. We've talked to you all day about John Harbaugh gate, the former Ravens head coach heading to New York for his interview. According to Diana Rossini, our friend in ESPN, dated software, NFL senior reporter over at The Athletic, says John Harbaugh will fly out of Teterboro Airport very soon back to his home, where he's scheduled to meet with the Tennessee Titans decision makers on Thursday, sources tell Diana. The meeting will serve as the formal in-person interview with the Titans at Harbaugh's residence. So kind of like we talked about, high-profile recruit back out in the market for a first time. He's going to take all those official visits. He's going to have himself some fun.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been difficult for the Giants to not let him leave because, again, they're not going to offer any more money than everybody else will empty the bank for Harbaugh. And it quite honestly, it's smart of Harbaugh to check out the top teams with quarterbacks like the Giants, like Tennessee, like Atlanta. And this is the perk of being, a great coach is they come to you. Right, they fly to you and meet you at your home. So, I
wish Harbaugh had done this like in where did Kevin Durant host his meetings here? It's an area so rich
Hamptons,
that I forget the name of it. Yeah, John Harbaugh with a house in the Hamptons, cloaked in linen, even though it's the middle of winter here, hosting all these teams. That's the visual I wanted to see it.
That's it. How about it? Just sitting at his big desk, and a line forming outside of his office, his home office, with teams waiting to come in. That's a position he's in.
Yeah, that certainly is. And again, the Titans also a team that has, and again, this is the wrong way to look at it. It's emblematic of the problems with this rule and the difficulties in enforcing it. But the Titans have also satisfied the Rooney Rule in this process. And so we're also in a position to hire John Harbaugh in this case if they so choose. So we're getting down to it. It's going to be interesting to see. Also, Matt Ryan, the Atlanta Falcons, obviously announcing his position with that organization, going to have their day in court with this as well. So John Harbaugh, unfortunately, no white smoke in New York, which means they're still waiting to find out who the new pope is going to be. And so we press on to the football that we're going to see this weekend. We talked before, and we'll look ahead once again, kind of do some deep dives into the games for the divisional round this weekend. We talked about the 49ers and the Seahawks, an NFC West rematch that we had seen twice already this season. Now, this weekend, Bills-Broncos. Fascinating game. We were all so impressed with the job that Josh Allen did, withstanding blows, coming in banged up against a Jacksonville team that was red hot in the NFL and getting a win on the road. Can Josh Allen do this again, Dad? Is that same path to victory that they showed us against Jacksonville open against this Denver Broncos team and especially this defense?
Well, I mean, listen, he's going to have to do his thing, or the running game can do its thing, right? It's the number one rushing attack in the league, now going against the number 2 rush defense in the league. And, oh, by the way, they just beat Jacksonville. Jacksonville was number 1 against the rush. So there's a stat out here that's completely misleading. They can become the 4th team to beat both top 2 rush defenses in the same postseason, joining the 2010 Packers, the 75 Cowboys, and the 72 Washington then Redskins. But why it's misleading is, yes, they beat Jacksonville, but Buffalo had a season low in rushing yards, 79, and a season low in rushing average with 3 yards per carry. So they didn't do it by running the ball at all against the number 1 rush defense, but it still obviously counts as a win. So that's kind of a stat that's misleading that I'll give when Ryan Radke and I are calling the game to make it sound good, but I will qualify it as well, that they did not run good. The thing here, Denver has 68 sacks. They had 364 last year, consecutive seasons, leading the league in sacks. And Josh Allen's been sacked 40 times this year, so he has definitely taken some hits. So that, to me, is going to be the interesting scenario. Now, the Bills have had 8 receivers take over 100 snaps this year. A couple are out, though. Gabe Davis with his ACL, Terrell Shavers, ACL, both got hurt in the last game. Now, they didn't have a lot of receptions during the year this year, but still 2 receivers down for Buffalo.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of like the 49ers situation where it's admirable, but at some point, man, it's got to give way. We've talked about it ad nauseum. The Bills, obviously, defensively, one of the worst rush defenses in the NFL, going up against the Denver Broncos team where they are built along the lines of scrimmage in a way that make them an incredibly enticing team going into the postseason. But kind of like you just mentioned there, it wasn't like this Bills offensive line that's one of the best, if not the best in the NFL. Josh Allen, this rushing attack with 2 guys with over 12 rushing touchdowns this season, really went out there and was able to crack that high to the Jags team. And the Broncos marry that rush defense with an even better pass rush. And so I just think that there's not a lot of safe harbor for them. Josh Allen only sacked once against Jacksonville, but contacted a bunch. And I'm sure that's going to get an uptick against what I think overall is a better defense than the Denver Broncos. So it would truly be some Herculean stuff. And I know people are going to do the narrative thing to Josh about how there's no Pat and Lamar and Joe Burrow in the playoffs this year. But man, like, this is a team sport. And while winning in the postseason does get off associated with these quarterbacks, it helps build the lore. Like, I don't know if anyone's going to look at what happens with the Buffalo Bills this year as the failing of Josh Allen.
No, I completely agree. Completely agree. And these two teams met in the wild card last year with Buffalo winning decisively 31-7. Buffalo was the number 2 seed last year, and they ran for 210 yards. So they did have luck running or success running against Denver, though. As I said, Denver number 2 against the run in the league, and Buffalo number 1 in rushing in the league. So this is the matchup, right? And both are cold weather teams, but the weather not supposed to be bad in Denver. Supposed to be in the 40s and sunny, and it's a I believe a 2:30 local time game. So you're going to be in the middle of the day. It's supposed to be sunny and dry, so the weather should not have any effect.
Love to see that. I want to see the great teams go out there and be great. Snow games are fun to think about, and the weather's a part of the lore in football too. But I want to see the great teams go out there and have a chance. And this Broncos team, the 1 seed counterpart in the AFC to the one we talked about in Seattle, going to be interested to see how they respond to the rest versus rush thing as we go forward here. So plenty of time to look ahead to that. Like you said, you and Ryan Radke going to be on the call on radio for Westwood One. So hoping for your sake, it is an absolute barn burner. Coming up next, though, we talked yesterday about the mounting pressure from the PGA to try and lure some of its biggest stars home. Let's hear the response from the live golfers of note next on Golic and Golic. As we wrap up on Golic and Golic here, let's live Moss, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. We know last time on Dragon Ball Z, the PGA Tour had themselves a week. Brooks Koepka, it was announced, was returning to the PGA Tour under the new return member program, which financially penalizes golfers who had taken part in rival leagues, but still allows him to make his way back to the tour for this season. He'll be playing at the end of the month, eventually in the Waste Management Open, and back with some of the best and brightest there. And the way that returning member program was structured allowed for players that had won either the the Players Championship or any of the 4 majors from 2022 to 2025 to return, which, unsurprisingly, were some of the best golfers in the world, including Bryson DeChambeau, Cam Smith, and Jon Rahm, who announced that they would all be sticking with LIV this upcoming season. You saw the varying levels of retort from these players. And Dad, this is always kind of what I figured, is getting out of these contracts has to be maybe a more complicated matter on the surface than we would expect. And for these guys of this magnitude, who golf clearly was laying out the welcome mat for here now under this new administration, I'd imagine these guys do think if push comes to shove and I become available to come back, they're going to once again make an exception because might makes right.
Yeah, the PGA wants the best players on tour, and while it will be punitive, like for Brooks Koepka, and I think the PGA has to do that, I think eventually they will get golfers to come back. Because also, Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, which paid these guys, I think, Rahm $300 million, I mean hundreds of millions of dollars, to the top golfers, are reluctant to offer the same massive contracts when these guys, if they're going to renew, they're just not going to give out that much money. But these guys already got a ton of money from them anyway. So we'll see. Those other 3, you saw the quotes from them. They're not planning on leaving anytime soon. But and we'll see. Remember when the PGA and LIV were supposed to come together? And that just has completely fallen by the wayside. We talk about hanging in limbo with that.
Yeah, it was hung over the head of the sport for so long, and then just as quickly it felt like sort of pushed by the wayside. Now, giving way to what we know is the reality. These guys go over and play a brand of golf that is seen by almost no one and really acknowledged or respected by very few when it comes to that. But the guys that can transcend, make it appearances in the major championships, have still proven pretty game for the fight. And so we'll see what happens going forward. To me, though, not altogether unsurprising. I still think Brooks Koepka on his own feels like a pretty big win, and the tour can do what it did here and position it as such as it goes forward into this upcoming season. So still going to be a ton of fun to watch and see how that takes shape.
Yeah, and real quickly, I think of the other 3, Bryson DeChambeau would be the big get back to the PGA over John Rahm and Cameron Smith, right? DeChambeau's got a great personality, plays in with the crowd well. He'd be the next one to get back.
Yeah, and certainly positioned against Brooks Koepka as they were before leaving would be interesting. Speaking of interesting, let's get to 4th and Golic here today. The Australian Open getting ready to kickstart in tennis coming up on Wednesday night in Melbourne. Jordan Smith, an amateur player from Castle Hill Tennis Academy in Sydney, won the second annual 1-point slam, what pits celebrities, amateurs, professionals against each other in literally what it sounds like here. They go out and play a 1-point match. The two contestants play rock, paper, scissors to decide who serves first. The amateurs get 2 serves, the professionals get 1 serves, and the winner gets 1 million Australian dollars, which comes up to about 668,000 US dollars. Huge jump. Last year, it was only like a 40 grand prize, but it's become a really fun event that both the pros and obviously the people that can win this life-changing sum of money really enjoy leading up to one of the Grand Slam events in tennis. Pretty cool.
Oh, it's very cool. It's like that show Pros versus the Joes, right?
Yeah.
Where you have the professional athletes or former athletes against average people out there. I think this is just awesome. It's got to be very entertaining. It's quick. Like you said, 1 point. You can do it a lot. I think it's a very, very cool thing. I don't know what sport you or I would pick to go against the pros anymore, since we're not pros anymore. I would be hesitant to really try anything knowing I'd blow something out.
This one's only appealing to me because I think in this case, the pros are kind of throwing it. If we really had to line up and receive a serve from Yannick freaking Sinner, no thank you. I value my life and my safety a lot, way too much to do that. But I think they all kind of understood the game and lobbed a few over and out to get there. So we'll see. Back for another exciting edition of Golic and Golic, or Pros versus Joes, tomorrow here on the show. Thanks for watching. For more Golic and Golic clips, make sure you subscribe to the FanDuel Sports Network YouTube channel.